I'll welcome you back to the lecture video session in Management and Entrepreneurship, Module 1, where in the previous videos, we discussed about the management and the functions, scope of the management, importance of the management, and the principles behind the management, and we understood the approaches of the management as well as the levels of the management. After knowing the basics of the management, we can discuss about the planning, which is the first function of the management. When we think about the planning, it is essential to know why the planning is necessary and what we are going to gain out of the proper planning and how exactly it makes the person to prepare well to organize the entire event or entire task in different levels, and at the same time how to achieve the success through the proper planning. So what is the nature of the planning? Nature of the planning, when we discuss, planning is the most basic function of the management and it is an intellectual process. The manager who is very well versed in the planning will definitely able to understand the 5 whys, as well as he would be or she would be knowing about what to do, how to do, when to do, how to break up the task, and where exactly the resources should be planned, and where exactly the planning may face a challenge. And by analyzing all this, a proper layout of the plan should be laid, so that the manager should be having the intellectuality so as to properly plan the task. It is nothing but a thinking in advance, because when we can foresee the things, it is better to plan accordingly. So planning would definitely help in understanding the level of challenges that the task may face during the time. So manager will become a navigator to take the entire process, and in the process of planning, manager will act as a navigator. And the plan should be very flexible in order to change and then reflect the changes that is happening around, and it should be able to adopt, and then it should be able to change, so that there will not be any lacunae in terms of executing the plan. So the plans should be laid out in with the flexibility in the different areas like finance and technology, market, personal management, organization. In every level, in every type of management, the planning should involve the flexibility. It is a continuous process, and the planning will be, if the planning is rigid, then there will not be any flexibility, because it will not be able to respond to the changes that is happening around. It will not be able to respond to the social disturbances, and at the same time it will not be able to overcome the disturbances that is happening around. So the plan should never be rigid, and the top level managers are concerned with the long level range of plan. For example, National Instruments has a 100 years plan, whereas the Sony has got the 75 years plan. These corporates will have a long level management plan, so that they will have a vision in order to achieve it. So top level managers are also concerned about the long level range of around 2 to 5 years, and middle level managers plan for few months to a year, whereas the lower level managers are concerned with day to day activities, and then they will be up to a week they will be able to plan, and then or maximum to an extent of a month. So the nature of planning indicates essential quality or general characteristics of the planning. So any planning includes the 4 essential features. First one is, it must contribute to accomplish the purpose and the objectives. It must be considered as the parent exercise of all the departments or the processes, and it should speed up all the management functions. It should also be cost effective and efficient. With these 4 types of essential features, planning can be considered as a non-static one, and basically it is a discrete function. So it is dynamic in nature, it is not static in nature, and it is a blueprint where the accomplishment will be measured, and it should be conformed. So when we think about all this, we must also deeply discuss about the nature and the features of or characteristics of the planning. So when we think about the characteristics of the planning, as we already know, planning is a goal oriented. It is focused to achieve success. It should be accompanied in order to achieve the predetermined goals. So it is made in order. It is made in a sequential order in order to achieve the predetermined goals. Planning is a primary function. It is Planning is a primary function. It creates any other managerial function, and also it provides the foundation to the future work. Planning is a thinking process, as we already discussed. Planning is a pervasive one. So planning is all pervasive because it exists in every part, every move. So it is in the outgoing activities as well as the happening activities, and it is going to be accompanied along with all levels of management. Planning is a continuous process and it is a never ending process. Planning involves a choice because it always involves the choices, as we already know that it is dynamic in nature and it should be flexible. Hence it involves all the choices, and best plan has to be picked up in order to achieve the success. Planning is flexible, as we already know, and planning is an integrated process because it involves a logical thinking, and it is right from the lower level to the top level. It involves the logical thinking as well as the execution of the work, overcoming all the challenges with respect to the outside or inside the disturbances, that whatever that may come across. So in order to achieve the higher level plans, the planning has to be an integrated process starting from the lower level. Planning is futuristic because we all know that planning involves the vision, and then the planning is the backup one, which is going to make the organization to achieve the vision through the missions. So the planning is looking forward and then prepare the business accordingly, and importance and purpose of the planning process. So what is the importance and what is the purpose of planning? The importance of the planning purpose is to achieve the success, and for an entrepreneur the planning is very much essential because it involves the financial planning, it involves the technological planning, it involves the marketing planning as well. So planning can be the importance of the planning can be laid out in few important points, and in an organization the importance of the planning is that planning provides the direction, planning minimizes the efforts and unnecessary efforts. It makes the process speedy, and it cuts down the uncertainty, and it ensures the coordination among all the team members, and planning leads to the economy, and it makes the cost effective process, and planning enables the decision making also, and it activates and then facilitates the decision making. Planning reduces the overlapping and wastage of efforts. Planning encourages the innovation and creativity as well. Planning facilitates the control, and planning improves the morale. So these are the importance of planning process. So when we think about the objectives, how do we achieve the objectives? So when we think about the objectives are nothing but the goals or the small targets that we are going to achieve. Before that, we will let's understand what is exactly an objective, why the characteristics of the objective has to be understood, and whether the objective has got any kind of hierarchy or the network. So we will understand all this with respect to the long range plan, with respect to the short range plan, with respect to the mid level planning, and before that we need to understand what are the steps in planning. The planning process goes through the following, the general steps. The first step is to establish the objectives which are tangible. Objectives are nothing but the targets. The first step of the planning is to identify the objectives or goals of an organization. So before setting up the objectives, both internal and external environment should be considered, and it has to be thoroughly studied. The internal environment means it could be the financial position of the company, it could be the staffing that is related to the human resources they are available, the experts that are available in order to complete the process, and it is the manufacturing facilities like the machining and then the other processes completion requirements that is existing inside the company, and credit worthiness of the company, etc. have to be studied properly. And external environment that is going to influence the planning is that the external environment could be with respect to the policies that are laid out by the government, rules and regulations, and socio-economic condition of the society, and the implementations that are going on, competition around, and then the suppliers reliability, etc. are the external environment that is to be studied while establishing the objectives. Okay. And objectives also they must also indicate the place how and when they are to be executed. So the next step is to establish the planning premises. Planning premises is basically it is an assumption of the planning. Premises has to be established in order to keep the planning in place. So planning premises are the basic assumptions of the future, and it is it is actually based on the tendencies, market tendencies. The tendencies are the conditions which becomes the basics for the current planning process. In other words, planning premises means to forecast the future business conditions in which the current planning works. So, in order to establish the proper planning process, planning premises has to be established considering the outside conditions. Planning premises depends on the internal and the external factors. External factors could be the availability of the raw material, the labor, power, the expertise, product demand in the market, and then the population trends, etc. And it also depends on the several internal factors also. After establishing the planning premises, next one is to determine the alternative course of action. The several plans have to be made and the best plan have to be picked up. In order to pick up the best plan, we have to consider the alternative course of action. A technical process may have one or two different ways and means to do it. First, most important thing is that to maintain the quality of the product that is going to be the face of the company, and second one is the process that is involved in order to cut down the cost, and then whether it is going to bring out any kind of different change in terms of product, in terms of its functioning. All these have to be studied properly in order to determine the alternative course of action. The planning is to several plans have to be laid out in order to find out the different alternative course of action, and we need to see whether there are any other alternative courses are available. Alternative course of plan of action is available, and first one is to locate the alternatives, and after locating the alternatives we can develop the different plans, and the different plans have to be verified first in order to see the various factors, the company status, company's product image, and then the market response, everything, and that has to be studied properly with keeping the assumptions in place. In the global village concepts, the resources come from anywhere, and then the products will also be sold anywhere, and then the market for the product can also exist somewhere else. So each one of the customer is going to be different, and then the planning has to be laid out properly in order to connect the available resources, alternate resources, as well as the alternate the products, and also the product with the different customers. So after laying out the different course of action, we need to evaluate the alternatives and we have to select the best one. The fourth most important step in the planning is to evaluate the alternatives and to select the best. While evaluating them, it has to be compared to the different standards that are relevant to the product, and then we need to select the best course of action. All the alternatives have to be compared, and not even a small point can be neglected in this course, and all of the plans have to be evaluated with respect to the objectives of the company and the other pros and cons, and then its reflections on the markets, its reflections on the availability of the resources, its reflections on the labor, its reflection on the cost effectiveness. Every factor has to be thoroughly verified, and then it should be verified against the objectives of the company. So the evaluation and then the selection has to be often done, like it should be done often with the help of the qualitative and then the qualitative and then the quantitative techniques. Quantitative techniques and then the operation research is very, very important in order to evaluate the different kind of plans and to select the best one. The step 5 in order to find out the best course of action, after this the step 5 is to formulate the derivative plans. To formulate the derivative plans, first we must have chosen the best plan out of all the alternate plans that are available, and after selecting the best course of action, the management has to formulate the secondary plans so that the major plan is divided into secondary plans in order to achieve the primary plan. So the secondary plans are going to support the basic plan, and then the derivative plans are going to be the sub plans. So the next step after formulating the derivative plans with respect to the departments, we need to seek the cooperation and then the participation So to after finding out which is going to be the best plan, the next step is to derive the cooperation and participation of all the employees in order to make the plan as a successful one. So the last step in the planning process is the steps in planning process is to measure and control the progress through the follow up. So how do we measure and control through the follow up is that progress through the follow up is that once the secondary plans are made, deadlines are fixed, and then the tasks will be evaluated continuously with respect to the quality standards. And once the plan is put up, the last measure is to measure and control the progress for the effectiveness of the implementation. So with this we are going to end up with the steps in the planning process. See you all in the next video. Thank you.